Grover Norquist is joining me now. He's the president of Americans for Tax Reform, ATR.org. Grover, it's always great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Scott. Good to be with you.
So it looks like the big, beautiful bill is going to happen, or at least a majority of it. I had a lot of doubts, and Freedom Caucus may still raise their hand and throw a flag on the play, but it's looking pretty good as of today.
It does. The House Ways and Means Committee, Chairman Smith really did a good job in putting this together. It's going to go to the floor. It'll be discussed. There will be some changes, no doubt, in the U.S. House floor. Then it goes to the Senate. Here's what is playing. There wasn't a tax increase in it. Some people had been pushing for a tax increase on the top brackets because they thought that's cute politics. It's what George Herbert Walker Bush did to get himself thrown out of the White House. And they didn't make permanent in the House bill, the House committee bill, the full expensing for business investment and the full expensing for R&D spending and the full expensing for interest in certain investments. All three of those will be made permanent when it goes over to the Senate. So there's an understanding both from the House and the Senate leadership. If you're a businessman, you wonder, those three are very important. They are very important. They will be made permanent on the Senate side. So there's still some things to be decided. At the end of the day, no Republican is going to vote against this bill. And because to stop the bill is to cut in half people's per child tax credit, to cut in half the standard deduction, to raise rates on every single American who pays income taxes. Nobody wants to be responsible for that. Everybody has their own list of things they'd really like to see in the bill. Understood, but there's going to be a lot of disappointed people. Here's the good news. In the next year, there'll be two more of these bills where we can go in and anything that was left out, anything that you thought was going to be in the sandbox, could have got pushed out of the sandbox because there wasn't space, can get into the next bill. There's a bus coming by twice more. You can get in the second bus or the third bus.
The most critical part of this is making the Trump tax cuts from 2017 permanent. Otherwise, we face perhaps the largest tax increase in American history and impacts every American family. This also includes, I believe, an inflation adjustment for at least 1 year, which will also help stimulate the economy and reduce everybody's tax burden as well.
Yeah, there are a number of little things that have been talked about for a while that are in the bill. It is a fine bill as written. It will be better when the floor has worked it and the Senate has gone on, particularly making it completely permanent on some of the most pro-investment parts of the bill. And again, we will have two more bites at this apple before the next election.
Explain the child tax credit. It's a $2,000 CTC, permanently extended. How does that impact our wallets for families?
Well, whatever your tax payment is per child, you get a tax credit. Take $2,000. If you owed $4,000 and you have a child of the right age, you drop that $4,000 to $2,000, and you pay taxes on $2,000, not $4,000, and that's true for each child you have. And it just basically says if you've got a number of children, they don't start taxing you at one rate. They take the income limit up higher, recognizing the cost of children.
So is this part of the president's idea of a baby bonus? Is that part of this child tax credit plan?
There's been a per child tax credit for quite some time in the tax code. So really it's a continuation of that policy. But
so let's also talk about
writing people checks to have babies historically hasn't worked. It's not what motivates people, evidently. But they've tried it in France. They've tried it in Hungary. Not really.
So no tax on tips, overtime wages, Social Security checks. That seems to be happening as well.
I think those will be put for 2 to 4 years out into the future. I mean, it'll start now, but won't necessarily be made permanent yet. We will see how that moves forward, and we will learn more about how much it, quote unquote, costs the government to do those things because they're new project lines. But yes, those will most likely be in the bill and will be helpful.
How do all of these tax cuts help to stimulate the economy? Obviously, we all want to pay lower taxes. We all want to keep more of the money that we're earning. But by reducing taxes long term, it does benefit the country.
Well, it certainly does. For starters, you spend your money more wisely than the government spends it.
Really?
There's very little waste, fraud, and abuse when you write the family checkbook. When the federal government is printing checks on a computer, there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. And one of the things that the DOJ committees were looking at, they were finding the beginnings of these problems. There's a lot to go after. The amount of money wasted during COVID, sent incorrectly, stolen, is in the trillions of dollars. So we need to be serious about reducing that waste and that fraud. Very important step in the right direction is to reduce the fraud in both tax credits that people get sent money for and actual spending pieces of legislation, checks written.
We're talking to Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, ATR.org. I'm glad you mentioned DOJ because this is where some of the Freedom Caucus members may throw a flag. It's on spending cuts. A lot of pushback, even from Republicans, to actually follow through with the recommended cuts that DOJ is making. I saw a post earlier that $89.3 trillion in federal spending is projected over the next decade. The House plan is $1.2 trillion reduction. That's a 1.5% cut. And the Senate side is a $4 billion reduction against $521 billion in increases. So are we really making any progress on cutting spending? I mean, the problems I've got with the big, beautiful bill are not the tax cuts. Those are great. Those are needed. We need to make the Trump tax cuts permanent. But when we continue to increase the national debt, which I realize the debt ceiling needs to be raised for fiscal reasons, but we're not cutting the spending to offset a lot of these tax cuts.
No, we cut taxes in order to get economic growth. We cut spending because that's the deadweight cost of government. How much does the government cost? Total spending is the cost of government. It doesn't really matter very much whether you pay for that total spending by taking money in taxes or borrowing it. It's gone from the real economy. You don't, to raise taxes to lower the debt doesn't change the cost of government. It just is how you end up collecting it. We need the government to spend less as a percentage of the entire economy. We want it to be not 24% of the economy, but 20 and 15% of the economy, a smaller percentage. The cost of government is how much spending as a percentage of the economy is done by the government. And anybody who likes to claim to be for spending restraint, I have to tell you, the people I hear whining about it most, I never see them out working to build the case and to get more people to support it. They just sit in a room and whine that somebody else hasn't gotten the votes for it. These people are not getting the votes in the Senate, which is where you need them, and in order to cut the budget. And by the way, for policy changes, law changes, you need 60 votes. You cannot do this in reconciliation. There's
No.
One of the gun groups, Gun Owners of America, is complaining that while the Republicans are eliminating the tax on suppressors, noise suppressors, or silencers, $200 was put in to be annoying, getting rid of that. They go, well, why don't you just get rid of the underlying law? Because you can't, under reconciliation, change laws. You can change numbers. The fine goes from 200 to 0, but but you can't change the law. And sometimes the congressmen, you wonder what they're doing. They complain about something. Why don't we do X? And the answer is because we don't have 60 votes, because this cannot be done in reconciliation. And I really wish that they would put some time and effort into getting additional votes from other members, talking to other senators, writing articles, being on talk radio, educating the American people on why certain spending cuts can be made. That would be helpful. Whining about it at this point is a little late.
Yeah, the downside of that is when you try to reach across the aisle to find some Democrat votes, you're accused of being a rhino or squishy on the issues, and nobody wants to be seen that way either. Grover, it's great to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. Always a pleasure to have you on. President of Americans for Tax Reform. Follow him on X at Grover Norquist, ATR.org. Grover, we'll talk soon.
Good to be with you.
Thank you, sir. I'm Scott Sands, SuperTalk Mississippi. It's middays with Gerard Gibbert.